The elemental system in HSR was poorly implemented and is almost trivial at this point. Let's talk about how this happened and potential ways to alleviate the issue. Go! The fact that we are approaching 3.2 and the elemental system hasn't really added any depth to the game is pretty astounding, to be honest. The match this color with this color system is incredibly boring and uninspiring. I can't wait for this to be the next event. Thanks so much, Hoyo.
This is a square. Can you guess which spot that goes in?
The square.
That's right. It goes in the square hole.
Yes. Okay.
And how about this rectangle? That one
Also the square.
that goes in there too.
As a game developer, shouldn't you be looking to add systems that in turn then add diversity or variety to your game? What's the point in expending so much money and time and effort into creating an elemental system if you're not going to use it or to push the envelope of what the game is capable of with that system? It almost seems like a waste of time and effort and money. The current iteration only lends to disabling characters versus certain enemies, giving Hoyo more control on which features they're going to add to new units. Then by selling us ways to circumvent elemental disadvantages, the character is now unique to some degree, or to some extent. This system also serves, or served really, I suppose, to allow Hoyo to entice us to further pull for typing diversity to flesh out our rosters. That's until they started adding units like Silverwolf or Acheron who were able to completely ignore the system outright. That being said, they can still, in ways, add enemies of differing types to counter overused meta-esque characters, at least ones that do not have elemental ignoring abilities. This problem has obviously become less of an issue, however, if we take power creep into account, which we should, there is a likely timeline in which units like Acheron or Firefly are no longer relevant, which we're fastly approaching, and we find ourselves with new, more powerful DPS that can't circumvent elemental resistances. And then we're back to square one, where they're able to impose different typing matchups for us that we have to overcome and sell us typing units that we need to have on our roster. So they can theoretically go back to the old ways. This system also limits team creativity due to the fact that typing is one less variable to consider when constructing a team. This leaves us in the situation we're currently in right now with less usable team comps or less diverse usable team comps. This is why HSR has become negatively streamlined in my opinion, because it's something like you put the follow-up units with the follow-up units, you put the break units with the break units, etc., etc. I mean, you see what I'm getting at, right? Imagine if they implemented a reaction system into Star Rail. It's not to say that they don't have the chops to do so, because they've already done so with Genshin, a very robust combat system with a robust elemental reaction system. Like, think of it like this. One unit would act, they would apply an element to an enemy, and then the next attack would then react with the element. This could really diversify the way combat flows. It would allow certain units to work better with each other that they wouldn't have been able to do before so because of their elemental typing. This could have very much diversified which units would be able to work well together instead of designating them with an archetype and dooming them to only be viable on that type of team. Now, this in itself would add certain issues like making speed tuning a lot more emphasized due to the fact that certain characters would need to hit certain reactions to make the reaction happen. Speed tuning is very snoozy, but at least it adds depth and complexity to the combat system. The reactions wouldn't even need to be focused around doing damage per se, it would just add mechanics to the fight. Imagine applying ice to an enemy, then if you hit them with fire, they receive a frostburn status that partially slows them and deals a small amount of burn dot. They could be creative with it, but the problem is they're not creative and they haven't been. Another potential negative that would arise from elemental reactions being important is a actual restriction towards team creativity because certain characters rely on other characters to apply the correct application. However, if Star Rail proceeded carefully, they could be more creative in disallowing these to be overpowered or being strictly damage based, so that now every single reaction would have some sort of buff or debuff that they add to the fight or some sort of element that they change. This would prevent a character from relying on a specific character because there would be some sort of use case for each elemental reaction. Honestly, meaningful typing systems allows characters to gain options throughout the length of a game as well. Certain units being added to the game with specific typings can literally change the value of a pre-existing unit due to the utility they gain from a new one. We've seen this countless times in Genshin. If we look at a character like Sitlali, who is specifically added to increase the melt reaction, she added a new option for melt-oriented compositions. And not to mention just how many characters became relevant after the addition of Dendro. I mean, it practically saved Electro as an element with the 1.5 times damage multiplier, plus Hyper Bloom and all of the many plant-based diet options that were added as well. This added so much different variety for team compositions, and it's amazing. It's very fun to participate and to think about what you could possibly come up with next. What kind of wacky ideas will he come up with next? God help me. I find that in Genshin, I try to expand my roster with more diverse typings because it allows me to create more teams within reaction archetypes. In Star Rail, they cannot achieve the same effect due to the uselessness in most cases of the types. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still valuable to have at least one of each type well invested just in case, but it's less fun. And it's more so that you're just checking off boxes rather than creating teams for the fun of it or the sake of it. It also, in some degree, takes away some of the interest I have for new units and their typing specifically, because in something like Genshin, I'm considering how this new type will synergize with pre-existing characters and what type of comps I can build around this new character. And it really just gets the brain juices flowing. The juices are flowing, you know, unlike your mother's last night, because I'm a nice Christian man. And I would never do anything to harm your family or anything of that nature. In HSR, I simply consider, well, what archetype are they and how strong are they? That's pretty much it. Also, in the lore, why do characters in HSR even have typing? I don't think this is ever explained. Maybe I'm stupid and I have done, you know, a couple searches, albeit like 2, but I don't know the reasoning for them having elemental types. But in something like Genshin, again, I'm going to keep comparing those two because they are of the same creator, right? But in that game, there is a vision attached to each playable character, or even sometimes unplayable characters, that gives them their elemental type resonance. And this is very important in the lore of that game, and it makes sense why they have the affinity towards those typings. However, in Star Rail, I don't know why they have them. It doesn't seem as important. The weight of it, the actual weight of it, isn't there. It almost makes you feel like they just added it to sell us more products. They would never do something like that, would they now, guys? Of course not. Now, one little side note, and it's not like I like switching my party to have to do things in the world, because I really don't, because I'm really lazy, but having types that are emphasized will actually help the overworld as well, because they can add puzzles or mechanics inside the overworld where the elements are important and you can clear specific obstacles with them. Then you could have more interactive puzzles like we do in Genshin, where you're moving around a bit more. I know Star Rail isn't really made to do that, but where's the harm in adding that type of content? There's never harm in adding more content. All of this being said, though, I suppose it's a good thing, because if typing was more emphasized, well, they'd have more ways to force us to buy new characters or need specific types of characters to clear specific content. It's interesting to consider that a game as simple as Pokemon in the 90s, a little pixelated game on a little tiny Game Boy, gained so much from having impactful typings. Imagine what a far more stimulating experience like HSR would gain. A more polished game as well, compared to the 90s games, even the modern Pokemon games. Jesus, man. Have you seen them? Jesus. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just a neat that talks to himself in a usually dark room, but I turned the light on for you guys. You're welcome. What do you guys think of the typing system, though? Do you want it to be more robust? Do you think the Bloods will eventually beat the Crips? Either way, it's been night. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Mwah.